for our discussion on Ballot 2017 as we spotlight women and this political season. Winnie Chuma is the chair of the National Gender Inequality Commission, and she joins me now. Good evening and welcome to the program. Winnie, let's start by taking a look at a few figures and seeing the women who are running for the very powerful position of governor. And let's just bring you some more information. There are 7 women out of a total of 209, of course, are running for this position. And we'll be showing you those who are running in the Senate position, 16 out of a total of 256 candidates, and for the MP's position, 111 women running out of a total of 1,893 candidates, and of course for the women's rep position, 299 women battling it out for those 47 slots. But be that as it may, with those numbers, Winnie, the fact is that the number of women who are contesting seats in this particular general election, even if they were all elected, will not meet the not more than 2/3 gender rule. Why do you think we have seen this very low turnout in terms of the women who have taken part in this particular electoral contest? Are these candidates who were kicked out at the level of party primaries, or was there some sort of suppressed interest by women in this particular polls?
Thank you, Anne. And I think when we look at the political participation for women, it has been a challenge ever since independence. In fact, the 11th Parliament was the highest, with 19.7% of women in the National Assembly and 26% in the Senate. Of course, courtesy of the new constitutional dispensation because of the 2/3 gender rule. Generally, it's quite expensive to run a successful campaign, especially when you're using the first past the post system Kenya uses, where you need to present yourself as a candidate, go look for the votes, maybe be a party member. But now we are seeing many candidates coming as independent candidates. And when I look at the list of even the women who are now coming in as independent, the number is so little as compared to the men. There are various reasons that contribute to this. One is that our political parties, as I've said this and I'll always say, are not quite encouraging for women to join and to participate. So we have public bodies that are supposed to be the political parties, but most of the time they run like personal interests, especially for the men. So we have very few women coming in and taking leadership role in the party seats. But that does not translate into the results. One is our cultural religious beliefs sometimes inhibiting for the women. Men have dominated for many years, and therefore culturally people have not warmed up to the fact that a woman would leave the domestic role to come into senior leadership position, and for this case political decision-making role. And therefore the quota system seats that have been made available somehow have also worked against the women, because in most of the cases where you find a very competent woman and you're wondering, why can't you run on an elective seat? And the response is that the men have convinced her that women have their own seats and therefore they should run on the women's seat. But it is very expensive to mount a successful campaign. And most of the time women do not have the money. And if you do not have the money in the first past the post system, you are as good as not even beginning it. Because I was reading today in one of the articles by Star, and I had done a commentary on it. You would need the resources to run the campaign. You need to have your supporters, the people who are around you, you need to pay them for them to go around. But if we had proper civic education done in this country, because the person who decides who wins is the citizens when they decide who they elect. But in their mind, the citizens have always believed it must be a man. And therefore, to change those roles and allow women to come into serious decision-making position, it will take a long time. Up to the time when we begin to invest a lot in education, especially civic education, to allow women to move from the domestic role to now come into the decision-making role, and especially in the political line. So the numbers you gave, we have 9 women that are running for gubernatorial positions. And unlike 2013, I was quite optimistic that this time at least, even if not 1 or 2, we would get some 2, 3 female governors coming in. But the reports we begin to hear around are not very, very encouraging, because clearly you would see a system where the male have dominated, and there are high chances that in this last round, women may not make it.
And do you think the men are dominating these campaigns still owing to the factor of money in politics, or is it the issue of the electorate still preferring to be led by men?
Both. The electorate still prefer to be led by men. We did a study with the Council of Elders, and we published it, and we wanted to know, especially like for communities that use the decision where the elders decide, where they are calling negotiated democracy. None of those communities have suggested a woman as the person who the communities should support. So clearly you find competent women who would run, but when the community is advised otherwise, then they would not vote for them. For example, Kirinyaga, we have 2 competent women, and of course we all have believed that one of them will be the governor of Kirinyaga. But surprisingly, when I talk to the male colleagues from those counties, you begin to hear them saying, oh, just watch, the man will pass in the middle. And so I'm like, it is the citizens who decides who becomes the governor. And is it that the people of Kirinyaga are not well trained, well educated to understand why it's important to vote for a woman? And they all are competent women who can come in and run.
But this is the thing.
Look at Wavinya.
I beg your pardon, the competence of the women does not necessarily mean incompetence on the part of the men who are running against them. And because this is a democratic nation where at the end of the day it is the people's right, one may wonder, why should the country continue then to invest in affirmative action if these 2 hold true? Number 1, that women candidates in this particular race have not shown as much as enthusiasm as in previous races, and if affirmative action, as you have just said, seems to have worked a kind of reverse way in their psyche in terms of taking positions that are reserved for women. And 2, in a country where the electorate do not want this, is this an agenda that is being pushed that, you know, the Republic just does not want, the women included?
Not quite, because look here, women, at the point when women were seeking to be nominated, the numbers were big. And I think we had about 23 women who were seeking to be governors. But at the point where the parties then began to do the elimination, we ended up with only 9 women. We ended up with 9, and one is an independent candidate. A clear demonstration that women are willing. Women are willing to go for these positions. But are Kenyans given the civic education to understand that it is important to vote in women as well as men? And clearly we are not saying that Kenyans should vote in women who don't qualify or who are not competent. But when a woman presents herself and you can see that she's able to deliver, but on flimsy reasons because of the cultural beliefs, you found that she's not given the vote. And I began by saying our fast past the post system does expect a woman to go around asking that the people vote for her. Violence is another area that we need to touch. And the violence here, I have had a chance to speak to these women, and even tomorrow I'm going on a trail just to see how they have fared on for this last week. And violence is not necessarily one being beaten up. Very, very abusive words. So clearly, you find a male candidate competing against a woman, standing and saying, this community has decided they can never waste their vote. Waste? So, I mean, if you're going to the community and you're saying you're wasting your vote, I mean, it's an abuse on the woman who is competing with you. And some of these things are hate speech, and we wonder why we have not seen people being prosecuted for some of these offenses.
Leave alone the hate speech side of it, the reality is that the nature of politics is ugly. It is rough. And so there are those who opine that women should be ready to rough it out, because they're still going to have to encounter colleagues of a similar, unfortunate mindset in Parliament. So is there a side to it where women perhaps are just not willing to get into the murk of it, which is the definition of politics?
And that is the Kenyan style. I don't think politics are this bad everywhere. You look at the UK, they just completed their election the other day and 200 women came in. I think for us, our letdown is our system. If I believe if we had a proportional representation like in Rwanda, it would enable us to vote in a party. And once you vote in a party, then the party would be standing on the principles of gender equality. Automatically, the party will have to bring in both men and women. We saw Trump and the competitor Hillary. And clearly, of course, Trump always tried to bring Hillary down, but she stood her ground. But you see, their process of voting is in a way that it totally removes you from being able to be the one going on the ground and saying, this is what I need, because it can be nasty. And I don't think it is right to say that the parliament making process is supposed to be rowdy, maybe the Kenyan style, because clearly the role of the MPs is quite not budget making. Why would you be fighting over making budget when it's clearly that you're looking at what are the development agenda, what are the gender agenda, and how do you divide?
We just have bad manners here, is it?
I mean, yes, but if people, these are supposed to be the waheshimiwas, one would expect that they would have some decorum in terms of what they are doing. And in terms of making legislation, again, it's a controlled process where you stand, you make your point, and the other person objects, and finally it's put on vote. So I think we are getting it not right if we are imagining that it is so serious that women cannot. I'll tell you, one of the days we were on a reporting mission at the international level. And one of the senior officers, who you'll allow me not to mention, indicated that, oh, the Kenyan parliament still does not have quorum, yet I thought we brought in women so that they would give quorum. Really? I don't think we brought women in the house to give quorum. Both men and women who are elected must give quorum to the house. And if the 11th parliament is anything, exactly, and if you, both men and women must be in the house to make the laws.
All right, hold that thought. We want to show you the women now who are vying for the position of senator in the next 7 days. All right, and we just include one more name that we unfortunately left out, Hazel Katana. She is vying for Mombasa senator. The last time we sat across from each other, we discussed the fact that, of course, this quorum is unlikely to be met in terms of the not more than two-thirds gender rule. And you said on this program that you would be petitioning the Chief Justice to dissolve Parliament, declare that it's unconstitutional, having not passed, you know, the requisite legislation on the same. What is the status on that? Did you petition him?
Yes, the Chief Justice was petitioned, and clearly the law does not restrict the petitioner to be the National Gender and Equality Commission.
Right.
It says any Kenya can petition. And therefore, after we counted the days and we didn't see any move by the 11th Parliament, the Kenya Human Rights Commission, which is a civil society organization, did petition the Chief Justice. At least that I'm privy to the information. I saw the petition that was passed to the Chief Justice. Now, where it remains the ball in the court of the Chief Justice, he did not respond, and neither did he dissolve Parliament. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with an 11th Parliament that ran unconstitutionally with the help of the Supreme Court ruling that we got in 2012, finished their business, and by 8th we'll be sending them home. Of course, already they took leave. And so the 11th Parliament is done. So the 11th Parliament was unconstitutional. It wasn't dissolved despite having
nothing happened. Nobody
happened, and it's business as usual.
Where does that leave us now?
Now where that leaves us is, and I really wish the people who are vying would pay attention to this. If the Chief Justice had dissolved the 11th Parliament, he would have helped the 12th Parliament to have a period of 5 years to make the rule as per the law. But the Constitution does not give room for the new Parliament that is unconstitutional. So I kept hearing them saying that they will not be moved because they will have another 5 years. I have checked the Constitution, I've read the Constitution, and that section doesn't exist. So what happens? On the 9th, 10th, when we now know the results and we tally them, and out of the National Assembly, of course, we have women who are vying, and the number is 131. If they are able to get the numbers, because we are looking for 53 to add on the special seats that would be made available. So if we get 53 women elected out of 131, then the National Assembly will have been served. In the Senate, I've seen quite a number of women. If we get 5 women elected, then the Senate will have been served. But if we don't, then a Kenyan can move to court to have the Parliament, the 12th Parliament, dissolved as soon as they come in. And watch the space. It's going to be drama of Parliament being unconstitutional, and we only hope and hope that the court can be true to the Constitution and indeed dissolve Parliament. Of course, the consequences are huge. The consequences are huge. There will be no budget. Of course, at least lucky enough, the budget was already passed. But I wonder how the Waheshimiwas who are running now will want to carry on by being unconstitutional. So, I mean, if the court declared them unconstitutional, I think the only way out is they can buy, if they make an application to the court and the court allows them some window of time to put this law in order. But as we stand now, any Kenyan should petition Parliament for dissolution. And let me not speculate, but I know that there are institutions that already have their papers ready. We also have our papers ready. Just in case we find that they are unconstitutional, we shall not allow them to be sworn in.
And very shortly, we're going to be showing you the women who are vying for the position of Member of Parliament. But watch out, because come August the 10th, we might be back in court sending everybody you voted in.
Yeah, but again, also just that before that, Anne, yes. Last week we were now also crying foul with the nomination list.
Right.
You know that political parties under Article 90 are supposed to nominate people for their special seats. And when we tallied what political parties have given to IBC, none of the political parties has complied with the list. The list must, the topmost of the list must begin with persons with disabilities, the marginalized, and the women, and then the other categories follow. Simple rules. Nobody has followed them. Why? Is it because we don't value the gender equality principle in this country? I think political parties must be taken to account. And what we are saying is the Kenyan who had applied to be considered for the special interest groups must begin to hold their political parties to account.
And I thank you, Winnie, for your views this evening. 12th Parliament, look out for her.
Thank you.
She's coming to get you. We leave you now with the women vying for the position of Member of Parliament. Good night and God bless.